Whispers of the Wind. In a small coastal village named Alaris, nestled between the cliffs and the endless sea, lived a young woman named Arya. She was known for her quiet grace and the way her voice blended perfectly with the wind when she sang at dawn from the lighthouse her family had tended for generations. Arya lived a peaceful life, collecting seashells, helping the elderly, and writing letters she never sent. They were love letters, always addressed to the one I haven't met yet. She believed that one day, when the wind changed, someone would come who would understand the melodies of her heart. That day arrived in the shape of a young man named Theo. He was a travel writer, lost both in direction and in life, who had come to Alaris to escape the chaos of the cities he once adored. The moment he saw the village lighthouse rising from the mist, he felt as if he had returned somewhere he had never been. Theo met Arya on the first morning he wandered the cliffs. She stood alone, hair flowing in the sea breeze, singing a song in a language he didn't know but somehow understood. Her voice stirred something buried in him, a longing, a memory, a dream. They became friends quickly, bonded by shared silences and long walks by the water. Arya taught him the names of the stars and how to read the wind, while Theo read to her from his notebooks, unfinished stories of places and people that never stayed with him the way she did. As the days turned into weeks, Theo found himself falling in love with her. Not in the way stories often tell of sudden flames, but in a slow, certain way, like the tide returning to shore. He knew she was different. Not because she was mysterious, but because she was real in a way he hadn't experienced before. But Arya was hesitant. She had loved before, once, long ago, and it had left her with scars too deep to see. She feared that loving again meant losing herself. And yet, with Theo, her fears began to soften, like driftwood worn smooth by years of waves. One night, beneath a full moon, Theo gave her a letter. "It's the one I never wrote," he said, "because I hadn't met you yet." She opened it slowly. It was her own words, phrases she had spoken, thoughts she had shared, pieces of her soul she hadn't realized he'd kept. At the end, he had written, "I came here to escape, but instead, I found the part of me I never knew was missing, you." Tears welled in Arya's eyes. "I've written letters too," she whispered. "But I never had the courage to send them." Theo took her hand. "Then let's send them to each other. Every day. For the rest of our lives." And so, they did. They stayed in Alaris, in the lighthouse above the sea. Arya sang each morning, and Theo wrote each night. Their love wasn't a storm, it was a gentle, constant wind that whispered through the years, telling everyone who passed through that some hearts are meant to find each other, even when carried by the wind. The letters we never sent. In the quiet village of Glenford, nestled between rolling hills and endless fields of lavender, lived a woman named Alara. She was a librarian, gentle, kind, and seemingly content with her peaceful life. But hidden beneath her calm smile were echoes of a love that once bloomed like spring and faded like autumn. 20 years earlier, when Alara was still a university student, she met Aidan, a philosophy major with wild ideas, a crooked smile, and a passion for old literature. They met at a poetry reading, where she had nervously shared one of her poems. Aiden, captivated, walked up to her after and said, "Your words feel like a place I want to stay in forever." That night, they talked until sunrise, sitting by the river, discussing everything from Plato to heartbreak. Their love was swift, deep, and undeniable. They promised to write letters every week during the summer, as Aiden had to return to his hometown in Ireland. But after the third letter, the replies stopped coming. Alara wrote for months, confused and aching, but Aiden never answered. Eventually, time did what it always does, it dulled the pain and turned passion into memory. She never loved the same again. 2 decades passed. Alara stayed in Glenfern, running the small library, living a life of quiet devotion to books and solitude. Then one rainy afternoon, a man walked in. His hair had grayed slightly, but Alara knew those eyes instantly. Aiden. He stood there, drenched, clutching a weathered journal in his hand. "I found your letters," he said, voice shaking. "My father hid them. He didn't want me to leave Ireland. He thought you were a distraction. I only found them after he died, tucked in a box in the attic." Alara stared at him, speechless. The years rushed back like waves crashing against her carefully built walls. "I came to find you," he continued, stepping closer. "Every word you wrote. I kept reading them. And I still love the woman who wrote those letters." Tears filled her eyes, not from pain, but from the relief of finally knowing the truth. They sat for hours in the library, sharing stories of the lives they had lived apart. He told her of the cafe he ran by the sea, of the nights he'd stare at the stars thinking of her. She told him of her poems, her books, and the dreams she had tucked away. And when the clock struck midnight, Aiden whispered, "May I stay a while longer this time?" Alara smiled, took his hand, and softly replied, "You already have." When the Stars Remembered. In a small coastal town named Evermere, where the cliffs met the sea and the nights were filled with the scent of salt and jasmine, lived a girl named Alara. She worked at her grandmother's bookstore, tucked between an old lighthouse and a cobblestone street. Every evening, she would sit by the large glass window, reading poetry aloud to no one in particular, except the stars. Alara believed that the stars remembered everything, old promises, forgotten love letters, and even the wishes made in silence. One rainy evening, a young man walked into the bookstore. He was tall, with a worn leather jacket and a backpack that looked like it had traveled through half the world. His name was Leo. He was quiet at first, only asking where the travel books were. But Alara, with her curious heart, couldn't help but notice the way he looked at the sea through the window, as if it were calling to him. He kept returning. Sometimes he bought books, sometimes he didn't. He listened to Alara read, always choosing the same chair in the corner, by the fireplace, where a cat named Orion liked to sleep. One evening, Alara asked, "Why do you keep coming back?" Leo smiled, a little hesitant. "Because you remind me of home. Even though I've never had one." That was the beginning. They began to talk more. He told her about the places he'd seen, lantern festivals in Kyoto, sunrise in the Sahara, dancing in the streets of Havana. She shared her dreams, of writing a book one day, of seeing the northern lights, of falling in love with someone who could understand the way silence could speak louder than words. Days turned into weeks, and their connection grew like ivy, quiet, strong, and impossible to ignore. But Leo carried something with him. A restlessness. A voice that whispered, "You were born to keep moving." So, on the first night of autumn, he told her he was leaving. I have to see the world before I can belong to any part of it, he said, not meeting her eyes. Elara nodded, trying to be brave. Promise me one thing. Anything. When you find a place where the stars feel familiar, come back to me. He kissed her forehead, like a goodbye and a promise wrapped into one, and walked out into the night. Years passed. Elara kept the bookstore running, wrote letters she never sent, and read poems to the stars. Some nights she would whisper, "Do you remember him?" And she believed the stars did. Then one December evening, during the first snow of the season, a bell above the door rang. It was him. His jacket was the same, though more weathered. His eyes held stories, but when he looked at her, it was as if no time had passed. I found a place, he said, his voice cracking, where the stars felt like home. And where was that, she asked, heart pounding. Right here, he said. With you. And that night, beneath a sky full of remembering stars, Elara and Leo sat side by side, finally still, finally home.